It is a brand new episode of Flyers Daily, and what has been just one of the craziest weeks in Flyerland, maybe since Richards and Carter were traded that one year. But joining us on Monday, as he always does, from PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, and HockeyBuzz.com, it is Bill Meltzer. Bill, plenty to talk about in this episode.
Yeah, not yes. Sorry, everybody, for the lack of activity this past week. Right, nothing to talk about at all. We'll figure stuff out, I'm sure.
Usually, when there's like tons of talking points or drama and all of that stuff, things aren't going well, but things are actually going well. And it's funny because in last week's episode, we touched on Cutter Gauthier. And I don't want to go back into this too much because it's kind of been talked about ad nauseum at this point, but we talked about the World Juniors that he had and, kind of the path forward. Little did we know that evening on Monday night, we would get notified as you and I were sitting next to each other in the press box that Danny Briere made a move and Cutter Gauthier is now an Anaheim Mighty Duck, an Anaheim Duck. And Jamie Drysdale is a Philadelphia Flyer along with a second round pick in next year's draft. So what did you think of this as, you kind of got your feet under you with the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, it really took a little while to digest it. I mean, first blush, you're checking to make sure that it's accurate. That it's not some fake Twitter account posting something. That was confirmed quickly enough that was real. And then Danny talked after the first period. And it's funny because that was a game, against Pittsburgh that was really a game that I think everybody had circled, and not the players because they didn't find out till after the game, but everybody else is kind of checked out on it. As they went on, you felt very disconnected from the game going on down the ice just because it was such a big picture, earth-shattering move. I think you evaluated from two standpoints. I think first from the hockey standpoint, Gauthier, there's no taking away from him that he's a very good offensive prospect.
Yep.
Has a huge shot, big body, has the potential to score goals, in significant numbers in the NHL. Now whether that's going to be at left wing or at center, that's Anaheim's issue to figure out. I don't figure he can play center there where they already have McTavish and Carlson. Again, that's their issue. I figure he'll play left wing for them. Danny referred to him as a winger. I mean, it's kind of been a back and forth thing internally in the Flyers organization as to where's his best fit. Is it a center or a winger? And when a player has that much talent, you find a spot for him. So that ultimately, I don't think that was ever going to be a determining factor. If he would have been willing to sign with the Flyers had a contract waiting for him as soon as he wanted to turn pro. So, so all of those things, it's just backdrop. Now with him being unwilling to sign, unwilling to not only not meet with Danny Briere and Keith Jones, he wouldn't even meet with John LeClaire and Patrick Sharp, according to multiple reports. He had his coach go and tell him he wouldn't meet with him, which is really bad for him. I mean, guys who are players of that stature, you might be in the same organization at some point. You never know how hockey's going to work. I just think that was pretty bad form on his part. But bottom line is, regardless, he wasn't coming here. And so the Flyers ended up making a hockey trade out of it. They didn't trade from weakness. They were able to keep all this under wraps, so even the teams they dealt with kept it quiet. So the Flyers were able to get the most return they could possibly get for Gauthier out of this. They made a hockey trade. One aspect of the rebuild that they still need is they need a potential top line center, more top six forwards. I mean, that still is ongoing. But one of the other big picture things they needed was a top end defenseman. And with Drysdale, who's still just 21 years old, high-end draft pick, we've already seen the 2 games he played, the skill that he has. His mobility is elite. I mean, he can really, really skate. Moves the puck well. Very clever passer. When he activates in the offensive zone, we saw it during an overtime. I mean, he's a dynamic young hockey player, and now he's healthy. You know, he missed a year due to a couple of injuries, the labrum tear last year, and then a lower body injury this year. Now he's healthy. Now currently dealing with an illness, but otherwise healthy. And so now, you know, the rebuild shifts a little bit to where you might have between Drysdale and Oliver Bonk, and you know, young NHLers developing, you know, like as Cam York. Now all of a sudden you might have that blue line nucleus that you're looking for, or the ability to add other pieces. So it shifts the rebuild a little bit. I think, you know, part of the reason that the Flyers hired Bob Murray in the first place, it wasn't specifically for Drysdale, but it's because he's always drafted, and, you know, Anaheim had a reputation for drafting and developing defensemen well. And a big part of the focus of Bob Murray coming in was actually in identifying guys who could be part of this rebuild on the blue line. So he drafted Drysdale, developed him, you know, like everybody else, and we've already seen a little bit in Philly that high character, likable kid, fit right in the room. So, you know, and wants to be here. That's obviously a big part of it too, because you don't want to be here. Ultimately, it's going to cause problems. So all of those things ultimately are positives. The deal was made now so that you could get maximum value. And I mean, I give total kudos to the Flyers being able to make a hockey trade here, no matter what kind of player that the Cutter Gauthier turns into, because they took a negative situation and they turned it into potentially a positive.
Yeah, as best you can. Bill, one of the remarkable things I've talked about this is, you know, this is now 3 times in the past, you know, 6 months that something really big has been going on with the Flyers and nobody knew about it. There was no reports.
Yeah.
First one is, you know, the hiring of Keith Jones. When somebody told me, that I remember back then, said, it looks like Keith Jones is going to be the president of hockey. I went, what are you talking about, Jonesy?
Yeah.
He's not interested in that. You know, he's got a great TV gig, the whole thing, right? And boom, Jonesy's announced. Nobody had a sniff. And then we find out Matvei Michkov's playing bubble hockey at the training center with his brother and his family in town a couple days before the draft. We find that out after. And now this, nobody had any clue. And then all of a sudden we get the baboom, we get the bomb dropped on us. But being able to operate under cloak and dagger and having the respect of the other people in the league to honor what you need and keeping this tight, I think is really important. And I think it shows a respect for Keith Jones and Danny Briere league-wide.
No, for sure. And we already, you know, knew by reputation how well like Danny is, and with our own dealings with Danny. But, you know, and Jonesy, I mean, you often hear that other teams' GMs, even when Jonesy was doing the broadcasting gig, they would just kind of pick his brain and see what he thought where their team was at, and, you know, their roster and other and general things going on around the league, because Jonesy is so plugged in and you know, knew what was going on, and is somebody who not afraid to share his opinion. So, you know, now we're seeing some of that in action, and you know, and it is absolutely critical that you know. And so many times you hear all these trade rumors, all these things that are supposedly going down. Inevitably, it seems almost inevitably, quite often the more significant things that go down are things that nobody ever knew about till it happened. And I think that's a positive, a positive big picture thing.
Bill, another positive that comes out of this is when the trade happens, you know, the front office snaps into action. We see Danny speak at the first intermission of the Penguins game. Second intermission, Danny's in the radio booth. Jonesy's in the TV booth. Dan Hilferty's with the Snow the Goalie podcast. And they're all saying the same thing. It's not, hey, get a different answer pending who you ask. Everybody seems to be on the same page. And because, look, this league is really hard. 32-team leagues, all that. If you're not all on the same page internally, it's going to be really hard to win externally.
Yeah. And I think a big part of this too is that in this process that took 6-7 months to go down, and it wasn't they were only watching video on Drysdale. Obviously, there's other possibilities, other plays you're discussing. All of hockey operations was involved in it. so that everybody was on the same page, that this would be a direction, or if you do end up having to move Gauthier, this is a player you're excited and comfortable about bringing in. So it wasn't, so it didn't catch anybody. While it caught all of us off guard, it didn't catch anybody on the hockey operations side off guard. And it was easy to get on the same page because they were already on the same page before the deal happened. So yeah. I think, I think one of the things that, we had in the previous regime, and I think we discussed this previously, is I don't think anybody was trying to deceive anybody, but I don't think they were often on the same page. I thought they viewed things pretty differently. And, having a unified outlook, I mean, you need that. And mind you, you have your internal discussions, and maybe there are some disagreements along the way, but you talk those out proactively, before you determine a direction. So, I think it's beyond the results the current team are getting on the ice. I think in terms of a big picture direction, it certainly seems to be working so far.
Yeah, and look, I know terminology, the words you use, often don't mean a ton, but having the terminology match, I think, does mean something after, what we've kind of been through here in Philadelphia. It's a bit of I talked with Bundy about this in the pregame. It's a bit of a healing period right now. Bill, let's get on the ice with it, though, and let's talk about this team because, I mean, what a week. You have the Calgary game for Ed Snyder, the tribute night last Saturday, a week ago Saturday. Then that loss to Pittsburgh. But since then, they come out with that 3-2 shootout win over Montreal, come from behind fashion. They go to Minnesota, and they overcome a 2-goal deficit in the third period to win that game 4-3 in overtime. And then on a back-to-back, they go into Winnipeg. And you may go, well, it's Winnipeg. What's the big deal? Well, first of all, going into Winnipeg is no joy at this time of year. On a back-to-back where they got in about 2:33 a.m. by the time they get to the hotel. Winnipeg's not on a back-to-back. They played Thursday against the Chicago Blackhawks at home, and Winnipeg was 16-1-2 in their last 19 games, top record in the NHL, stingiest team in the NHL. Connor Hellebuck's vet. I know they were missing Scheifele and Kyle Connor. Flyers are without Couturier, without Jamie Drysdale with that illness, and they still go in and come away with a 2-0 win. How can you explain this to me?
Well, I mean, you have not a formula, but you have a process you have to follow to be able to win those games. I mean, the record even of top teams, when you're at a pretty severe, fatigue factor disadvantage, is you don't have to, you play from ahead. You don't have to chase the game. You maximize your energy while you have it, and and then you need great goaltending. Ultimately, down the latter part of the game, the Flyers really outplayed Winnipeg for the first two periods. Winnipeg had a little push at the end of the second period and a power play that carried over into the third. But really, for most of the first 40 minutes, a lot of the play was in the Winnipeg end of the ice, and the Flyers were outplaying. In the third period, they got goalied, Urson slammed the door on them. And, it's going to be the same thing in St. Louis. St. Louis is not as good as Winnipeg has been this year. But they're another team that they've been, as with Winnipeg, they've been at home all week. They've had no back-to-back games, right? They're trying to move up a little bit in the standings. They had plenty of issues early in the year. Craig Berube is out, Drew Bannister is in, and they're trying to get a little bit of a roll here. It's been a little bit up and down for them since New Year's. So. It's a big game for the Blues too, and I think the Flyers need to follow the exact same process. I mean, last game, whether Couturier or Draisaitl or both or neither are available, it's the same process. Now, obviously, it becomes a little easier if they're available, particularly Couturier. In Winnipeg, the Flyers had only 3 centers available.
Yeah,
and really kudos to all 3 of them. Because Scott Lawn pulled down 24 minutes of ice time. Wow. Morgan Frost had a hell of a two-way game and a key assist on Atkinson's second goal. And Ryan Poehling did a lot of the grunt work because killing penalties. He was really good on faceoffs in that game. I mean, without Couturier and having to rotate all your wingers around the 3 centers, if your centers didn't collectively play so well, you probably don't hang on to that game, right? That's a game that could get away from you. So I thought that was a key and something else that has to continue on Monday. But you could look up and down the lineup and also in the bigger picture here. Huge that Cam Atkinson got the 2 goals.
Yeah.
Finally gets that. And that list, that not only was a huge weight off of his shoulders, it lifted the whole team. I mean,
they all carried it.
Yeah, everybody carried it. I mean, Cam is such a well-liked, well-respected player in that room that him scoring and then scoring again gave everyone a lift, gave everyone energy. You need everything you can to find energy in those kind of games, and he supplied that. And also, again, the key aspect of playing from ahead.
Yeah.
We've talked. I don't know how much we've talked, Jason, about secondary scoring, support scoring.
Oh, huge.
It was huge. So Tippett put together a 3-game goal streak heading into the Winnipeg game. Didn't score in that game, but he had plenty of chances. Finally worked out of his 16-game goal drought. Big goal, in the Minnesota game to get the Flyers back within a goal. Frost has 4 points in the last 5 games. Flyers have 5 power play goals in the last 5 games. Obviously, that's the best streak they've had in quite a while. And Frost has points in 3 of them.
Yeah.
So that's been a big thing. It's just different places you can look that they're getting the support scoring. So it doesn't have to only be Farabee, only be TK, only be Couturier. Now they've been able to spread the offense around a little bit, and that has to continue. Not just in the final game of the road trip, but coming home and going forward. They can do those things, then you're right there.
Yeah, they're in that position now. The thing is with the power play, it looked like on that Western Canada trip when they were out in Seattle and then obviously up in Edmonton and Calgary. It was a better looking power play. It just wasn't executing to the point of scoring a goal. But you were starting to go, it looks better, but we can't go on looks better anymore. You got to score some freaking goals here. And then now the 5-game streak with a power play goal in each. And it's funny because power play is like anything else. You get a little confidence and all of a sudden then you can make plays. It becomes easier. The pressure's released. And now all of a sudden the power play looks like it's got a ton of motion, whether that's with Drysdale or York in the Winnipeg game or Zamula, who keeps it very simple but straight ahead. And all of a sudden the power play looks like something that could be, a huge element for them in this final stretch of the season.
For sure. And you look at since the Christmas break, they're a little bit over 18%. That's not going to lead the league, right? But it's actually the bottom third of the league, but it's fine as long as you keep killing penalties the way they're killing them. That's fine, and then it's definitely progress. So that's Flyers can't even worry at this point about where their season ranking is because it was just so desolate in that first half of the season. I think that look at where they rank in the second half of the season, which I think will tell you more than what their final ranking will be because it'll be almost impossible to pull up, beyond about 25th, something like that. No matter you have to just go insane on the power play to move up significantly. I don't think they have the personnel to do that, but I think that they certainly have the personnel to not be at the very bottom. I think what we've seen since the Christmas break is a little closer to what they're capable of doing at least.
Yeah, you got to look at it in smaller capsules, which brings me to the next guy I want to talk about, and that's Sam Ersson. Because if you take out his first 3 games, then all of a sudden it's a different stat line. He's been unbelievable, Bill, and I'm getting a lot of tweets. Oh, for the playoffs, who's the starter in the playoffs? And to me, this is still a very easy answer. As good as Ersson's been, I don't think we can discount. Carter Hart has not been chopped liver. He's been very good as well, and I think there's some competition driving those two, which I think is never bad, especially in the crease because there's only one net for the game. But Ersson again, unbelievable performance, and Hart's been great as well. Some people go, well, trade Hart now and do this and get this. And I go, why? They're not in the position they're in right now without both of those goaltenders. Why take a huge strength in a league like this where so many teams don't have this strength in net and make it a question mark or make it potentially a weakness.
No, for sure. And you look at stretches like this where the Flyers are playing 3-4, 4-6, 5-8. You need both goalies.
Yep.
And they're gonna have that long bye week coming up soon. But what happens on the other side is everything gets really busy and compacted again. And the Flyers it's not even a luxury; it's a necessity now to have two good goalies. One of the reasons why the Flyers finished where they finished last year, and mind you, there were a lot of things that were just kind of beyond his control. But I mean, really, Felix Sandstrom did not get the job done last year. Yep. It was almost a guaranteed loss. When
he had one win,
Felix,
think,
just, right? They won, and a lot of it was again because they were back to back, some tough games, some tough breaks, but he had that tendency for that one bad goal too on a team that struggled to score, and I mean, one thing every goal is going to give up one here and there he wants to have back. Hart had one of those on Friday night in Minnesota. He would have liked to have had Ryan Hartman's goal back, no question.
Yep.
But on the whole, his body of work for that game was strong. And the Flyers go in every game knowing that their goalie's going to keep them in it, give them a chance to win. And even if it's a little rough at the beginning, like Urson, the 2 deflection goals that Montreal scored, he keeps going.
Shots keeps they got, by the way, in the first period.
Yeah. They're only 2. Yeah, they outshot him 10-2. Both of the 2 were deflections that no goalie could stop. So he didn't make a save till early in the second period. And then he stopped all 17. He saw the rest of the game, and then 3 for 3 in the shootout. That takes a great degree of mental toughness to be able to do that. Both goalies have that. Both goalies can just reset and just keep going forward. And if you have that working for your team, and then when we get into off seasons and contracts and those things like that, then you have to recalculate it a little bit, and figure what you do going forward. For the rest of this year, you don't touch it. You actually have a pretty big strength going with 2 starter caliber guys, and and if Hart gets hurt again, he's kind of prone to being banged up a few times during a season, or if Urson goes down for a time, you don't worry about it because you have another guy who can carry you.
And you're not killing just one guy right now when you have both.
Yeah.
So if you have to go through a period, like Erson had to go through that period where he had to play 5 straight when Cutter was out with the illness. And so it wasn't overwhelming because he's not playing a ton. So I think that it's a perfect situation. His last 16 games, if you take the first 3 out, Erson is 11-3-2. He's only allowed 30 goals. That's under 2 a game. And he's got a .930 save percentage. Oof. And the shootouts to boot. I mean, crazy. Just bananas stuff. It's unbelievable. They're going to wrap up the road trip tonight, Bill, in St. Louis. Then they're going to come home for 4. See a couple good teams. Dallas, Colorado. Dallas, real good team. Colorado, obviously, real good team. And Claude Giroux is going to return to Philadelphia coming up next weekend on Sunday. And then they'll wrap up that 4-game homestand with Tampa Bay. Huge games here to get them to the All-Star break. Hey, Bundy said something really interesting when I had him on pregame. He said, it's a lot easier to stay in the playoff, as a playoff team than it is to get into being a playoff team at this time of year. Because we see all these divisional games and conference games, 3-point games, and the Flyers are right there right now. It's better off to stay there than chase it.
No, 100%. Bundy's totally right on that. Because not only do you have to get hot, you have to stay hot.
Yep. And other teams have to lose.
Those other teams have to lose too. And sometimes you go through those stretches where you're, say, 7-1-2 or 7-2-1, and you find that you've stayed right where you were, or maybe you've gained a point, maybe you've even lost a point. And that's that's why it's so hard once you get into the second half of the season. If you're chasing the pack to catch up. I mean, is it possible? Does it happen? Yeah. The teams sometimes collapse in late in seasons. It happens, especially when it's tightly packed. But you put yourself in a much, much better position when you're the one playing from ahead.
No doubt about it. Not chasing those standings. We saw that a number of times in the 2010 to 2020 era of the Flyers, particularly 16, 18, And just many times the team runs out of gas. Just can't do it. Not a good way to make a living. Bill, great stuff as always. Read Bill's work at PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, and HockeyBuzz.com. Flyers Blues tonight. We'll break it down for tomorrow's episode. Everybody have a great Monday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on a brand new episode of Flyers Daily.